Hey there, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Jason Boyer here on WLOS's YouTube page. I appreciate you guys joining in, and please subscribe to this page if you haven't already. And of course, you'll get more information that way and alerts as to when we do these updates as this winter storm is moving into our area as we go into Friday. And new information to share with you. I got a lot of things that I want to break down for you, so let's get right to it. The first and foremost, we do have the storm obviously evolving as we speak. There it is on the map. It is a large scale system already, as we have a lot of moisture spreading into the south and the southeast already. We have heavy rain south of the I-20 corridor, north of the I-20 corridor, mostly a wintry mix of ice, sleet, and snow. You get to the I-40 corridor, and it is a lot of snow that's happening from Oklahoma into Arkansas and now into western Tennessee. And we have winter storm warnings out for a large area. So this is going to continue to be a big situation that unfolds down the road. Take a look at what is happening here in terms of the winter storm warnings. They are very widespread, obviously. You can see those winter storm warnings are out for many places, including all of the Western Carolinas, and that is going to start tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. and go until Saturday morning. So this has not changed. The significant ice and snow event is expected to unfold in the coming hours as we go into tomorrow, and especially tomorrow evening. So avoid travel if you can tomorrow evening. Four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive recommended if you are going to be out on the roads, because some of these roads might be impassable. We are certainly looking at accumulating ice and snow very quickly into the afternoon and evening tomorrow, and that is going to lead to some big travel difficulties. Let's play it out. Now, this model wants to keep this snow and pretty much all snow for the Western Carolinas to start. Now, that doesn't necessarily match up with all the other data that I'm seeing. I'll explain that in a second. But 9 a.m., we might have some of the snow already showing up in our western zones. Certainly we'll have it over the Tennessee Valley and North Georgia. Atlanta, it's going to be a mess. I mean, Atlanta is looking at an ice storm that is maybe some snow briefly, but really an ice storm down there, and that's going to cause huge problems, as you can imagine, for 5.6 million plus people in that metro area. We got some snow showing up in our western zones by 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. This model still wants to spread that snow quickly to the east, and by 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, has snow pretty much falling over much of the area. Now watch as we go into the late afternoon. We start to push that purple shaded color farther north, and that is likely to include more of the upstate and certainly more of the southern mountains. Now, where will this line between freezing rain and sleet versus snow, where will it go and where will it be? That's a huge question at this point, all right? Some of the models want to keep this, and as you're seeing in this model, want to keep most of the snow going for most of the region here in the Western Carolinas. So it doesn't transition to the sleet or freezing rain in most cases. But there are other models that really bring in a warm nose, and that means this line of sleet could push well into the mountains. Okay, so this is going to make or break this storm for a lot of areas south of I-40. Okay, so I think south of I-40, you're going to get on the front end big bursts of snow adding up quickly, and then it might transition to a mixture of sleet and snow, and then it might even go over to sleet before the storm wraps up. So that's the thinking. I think that is definitely likely for areas into the upstate. That's where we're probably going to find a much, much greater chance of getting sleet north of I-85 and then freezing rain south of I-85. So that could really cut down the snow totals in the upstate. Okay, I still think on the front end you're going to get your snow. It's probably going to be later in the storm, later in the afternoon, more evening, that you start to see some of that warmer weather move in, or the warm nose. That's going to cut down some of these totals, folks. I mean, that's a big X factor in the entire storm. How much can we add up snow-wise in these areas that I've highlighted before sleet takes over? And it very well could do that quickly. So that is the biggest question mark. Then as we go into the end of the storm, which wraps up pretty quickly by midnight, I think most of the snow and sleet and everything else is done. Then we go into the morning on Saturday, and we do have some leftover snow. This is going to be favoring the high elevations, though, of western North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, for that leftover snow behind the system. All right, after that, it's all wrapped up and things are quieter. So let's take a look how this breaks down. Winter storm timeline, mid to late morning on Friday. We expect snow to start for many, and then it spreads and increases in intensity through the afternoon and evening. Now the snow is likely now to mix in the mountains, especially south of I-40, and the snow and mix will certainly be guaranteed for the upstate. All right, so that's going to cut down totals in the end. Friday night, the storm ends, likely as a mix or some snow, but again, a lot of it is going to be moving on quickly into Friday night. So that's how we see the storm timeline go. Let's talk about that timeline again. When does it start? Friday's winter storm probably between 9 and 11 a.m. for a lot of locations west of Asheville. Between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. we think the snow will start in that time frame for the I-26 corridor. That includes Greenville, Spartanburg, into Asheville and Hendersonville. And then farther east, it'll be later in the early afternoon, and we could see that snow spread as far east as Charlotte by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, okay, if not sooner than that. So that's when we think things will start. Now here are the totals. Potential snowfall. Keep in mind, mixing is going to have its say in this storm. So some of these numbers, again, don't focus on all the highest end number. Focus on the range. That's why we have a range, because somebody is going to be disappointed, okay, in terms of the snow. I guarantee that. So 3 to 6 inches is generally what we think will fall in most areas across western North Carolina. That's like 90% of the population in western North Carolina gets 3 to 6, okay? I know you heard the 6. Did you hear the 3? It could be that low in terms of some of the snow, okay? So 3, 4, 5, 6, that's the range for most of us in western North Carolina, okay? That's 90% of us. Then you have the exceptions. You have the higher elevations, okay? So you have the higher elevations of the Balsam Mountains. Where are they? That's on the edge of western Haywood County and eastern Jackson County. So that purple shaded area here is 6 to 8 inches because you're going up in elevation and you're likely going to have a better chance of keeping it snow. There is also that higher end 6 to 8 range down into the Cashers area, just outside of Lake Toxaway, high elevations there, southwest Transylvania, southern Jackson, and southeast Macon County. Again, those are areas down Highway 64. If you visited this area before, a lot of Atlanta folks will come up here and they will go to Highlands, or they have friends in Highlands, or homes in Highlands, or Cashers area, Sapphire area. That's the area we're talking about, 6 to 8 inches total. Okay, come down in elevation, and it's at that 3 to 6 inch range for most of the southern valleys. Okay, then you get into the highest elevations over the Smokies, and that's kind of the bullseye for the bigger totals. I think 8 to 12, and that's going to be reserved for probably 5,000 feet up. Okay, so the Smokies 5,000 feet up get 8 to 12 inches. Then you come down and you get into the very tricky areas of south of I-40 to the I-85 corridor, and even south of that. So these numbers like 2 to 4 inches in that lighter blue shading, that includes much of the northern upstate, north of I-85. That's a very tricky forecast because sleet is going to really be a problem. We could add up a lot of sleet down there. You get south of there, and it could be freezing rain on top of some of the snow and sleet down into areas of southern Greenville County, southern Spartanburg County, maybe even central Spartanburg County, down into Anderson County, the 85 corridor south, okay? That's going to cut down your totals. And I think that's going to also be a problem at least in terms of the sleet mixing in for our foothill neighbors. And we're talking Rutherford County, Polk County, McDowell County, Burke County, Eastern Henderson County. Those places are going to be 2 to 4 inch range and sleet adding on into that equation as well. Keep in mind, we got about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch roughly. I know that doesn't include everybody, but a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of liquid to wring out of this storm. That's what most models are showing. If any of it is wrung out as sleet versus snow, it cuts the snow totals down. Normally we get like a 10-to-1 ratio, whereas an inch of liquid equals 10 inches of snow. If you were to cut that in half and you get 1/2 inch of liquid, you should see around 5 inches of snow. But when you mix in sleet, that takes some of that amount of liquid and cuts it down in terms of how much snow you get in that ratio. So we might see some places, again, end on that lower end amount and the ranges. That's why we give those ranges. Again, it's a complicated forecast. I'm not going to lie to you. This is always tricky when you have a warm nose moving in. And that warm nose isn't at the surface or just 1,000 feet up. It's several thousand feet up. So as that precipitation is frozen and it gets a little warmer above, that precipitation begins to melt and might become rain. And then as it gets colder and colder and colder towards the surface, it starts to freeze up again. And if it has enough time, it becomes a sleet pellet. If it doesn't, it hits the ground very much on contact with any surface and becomes freezing rain. We don't think freezing rain is going to be an issue in most cases. It's really the sleet and the snow for a lot of us. That's what we think. Okay, so let's talk about this again. How do you prepare? So at home, shovels, ice melt, keep those sidewalks and driveways clear if you can. On the road, they're going to become icy or snow covered very quickly or some kind of combination. So avoid travel, especially later in the day Friday. We're talking late afternoon into the evening and overnight. That means all non-essential travel should be off the roads. That means the vehicles that are not first responders or DOT crews. Those are the only types of vehicles that should be on the road at this point tomorrow night. DOT crews, emergency vehicles, first responders. All right, let me answer some of your questions here. Yes, that's funny. Arctic cold, you never know. I mean, this is always tricky. I know a lot of folks want to, put a little quip in there about the forecast and such, but I tell you, we don't take this lightly, folks. We pore over the data, and it's a continual basis that we pore over this data and the models that come in. So it does change, and the reason why we always tell you stay tuned or stay with us is because the models do tend to flip back and forth, and as you get closer to the storm actually happening, sometimes you can see big changes, okay? And in this case, I would call this a fairly big change in terms of there's probably going to be more warming above and creating that sleet that cuts down some of these totals. So again, we want you to be prepared. I would prepare the same way. Even if you get 2 inches of snow and 2 inches of sleet, prepare the same way as if you got 6 inches of snow or 4 inches of snow and 1 inch of sleet. It's all going to be the same impact. It is going to be difficult and dangerous to travel, okay? And it's going to take crews time to get that off the roads. Untreated roads, avoid them, okay? That's my advice. Hey, listen, thank you very much for listening to this. Let's see, somebody's asking kind of road conditions you expect in Asheville by Sunday. Okay, so by Sunday afternoon, I think we're going to be faring much, much better. We will see the storm will have been done for almost 2 days, and it will definitely be better on those treated roads. A lot of the treated roads will not have snow on them. They'll be plowing even through the day, Saturday, I should say. But we do expect refreezing of melting snow and melting sleet. That will happen at night. So in the morning hours, especially those early morning hours, Sunday and Monday, Very tricky, especially those untreated roads, or some of the melting that goes onto the treated roads could become black ice. So that's going to be a problem. Somebody's asking about the polar vortex. No, the polar vortex has already happened. I mean, it's always happening. The polar vortex is just a kind of ribbon of air. It's like a jet stream, okay, that circles the North and South Pole at high altitudes. We're talking 45, 50, 60,000 feet up, okay? That's always happening. The polar vortex, it's been there for centuries, but it's weaker or stronger or kind of wobbles, if you will. And if it wobbles and lets this cold air come down, then we talk about it. And we say, oh, the polar vortex is allowing this cold air to come down. It's really the jet stream and upper level wind, okay? And they always fluctuate, kind of like temperatures fluctuate. So, yeah, is it cold? It's cold now because the polar vortex did weaken and did allow some of the cold air to come down into the January time frame. I mean, it's been below average every single day here in Asheville and the mountains so far this January. So it's been a frigid one. I think it's the 9th coldest January on record so far, which is impressive. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to wrap it up. I got to do an update here for our late newscasts that come on at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. So that's it for me, and I hope you are prepared for the impacts that are coming. So stay safe and